Hi, everyone. My name is Lien Tran. I am faculty at DePaul University in Chicago, and you are joining us for a coffee panel with faculty from across the world. We have an international panel joining today, and also welcome to the start of the inaugural IndieCade Horizons event. Quickly, we'll go around and give a little introduction. We can start with Kat. Would you like to start?
Hi, everyone. I am Kat. I am the director of the Games and Emerging Media program at Marist College, and I'm excited to talk to you today. Welcome.
Thank you. Chris?
Hi there, I'm Chris Totten, program coordinator of the Bachelor of Science in Animation Game Design program at Kent State University on the Tuscarawas campus. Great to be here.
Daniel.
Hi, I'm Daniel Vella, and I'm a senior lecturer at the Institute of Digital Games at the University of Malta, right, where we offer an MSc in digital games. Looking forward to talking to you all.
Matt.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Board. I teach at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, the Games and Simulation program.
Thanks. Song.
Hi, my name is Sang Nam, Director of Computer Game Design Program at George Mason University.
And William.
Hi, I'm William Huber. I'm the head of the Center for Excellence in Computer Game Education at Abertay University in Dundee, Scotland.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you all for being here today. So again, I'm Lien Tran. I'm actually new faculty at DePaul, having just joined in January. I'm really excited to be here to learn about all the programs that are represented here and just to really talk to the students out there, both current, even recent alumni, but also prospective students who are looking maybe to study further, to further their games education and what that might look like at our various institutions. Today, it's hopefully it will feel like a conversation. I will be asking some questions. They're a little bit off the cuff, and you know, you'll have some fun funny responses to these. And yeah, I look forward to speaking with all of you. All right. So we might all have our different areas within the broader scope of games. Some of us more on the game design or game dev, or even on the research end. But I would start by asking this question. So what is something your program teaches that is outside the standard realm of what people think of as maybe even games, right? Because we do kind of have our segment. There's this understanding what we mean by games. I found myself, I've been teaching games for about a decade now, previously at University of Miami in Florida, now at DePaul. And it's amazing how people have very kind of a narrow idea of, or don't even know, they realize they have assumptions about what it means to make and study games. And it doesn't include much of what we do. So is there something that your program does that maybe be outside of the standard definition or understanding of what games might be? And I open the floor to anyone who wants to jump in.
I'll start. Thanks for the question. Some of the things that we've been working on are study in the business of games, and also things that are games adjacent, such as XR and virtual production.
I can take a stab at it. So one of the things so we were recently accredited by the National Association of Schools of Art and Design, or NASAD. And one of the things that we've really tried to embrace with that is the connection of games to the broader landscape of like art and design and media that came before games. So one of the things, and especially since our program is not just games, it's also animation, we really try to focus on the history of these mediums and trying to integrate these things in meaningful ways. So in our games that we have now in this show, you might see like one of the games is heavily themed on, design of the early 2000s and product design and things like that. So we really try to take that like, yes, games, but also what else approach.
And I can add a little more. We teach applied research and applied art, I would say. Yes, we teach graphics and 3D modeling, which could be considered as traditional art, but at the same time, we add this applied art, the utilizing art and combine art with technology. So we focus on like simulation or sometimes gamification and serious game to advance other researches, especially at George Mason. We work with other colleges within university and help other researchers who can utilize game technology to materialize their research goal. For instance, we did the AR, augmented reality combat medic training system with the US Army. And basically, we are working with teams of doctors and healthcare professionals to create training system using game technology. So that's something we are seeing, especially in all like computer game or video game programs in the colleges and universities.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, these are really awesome things that you're doing at your programs. At our program at Marist College, we have your typical classes in programming and art and game design. And we try to support all of those areas. But we also have a bunch of unique classes. We do have a business of games class. One of our really popular classes is actually ethics in gaming. So we talk about the social impact of games. We talk about representation in games. And we also, almost every day, there's something in the news related to ethical issues with gaming. So there's always a lot of hot topics to talk about. And a lot of times people don't really think about the ethical side of gaming as well. We also, just beyond the classroom, we have students working on all different kinds of exciting projects. We work with a lot of nonprofit organizations to help support their goals. A lot of times people don't think about how games might help in supporting everything from inclusion and making people feel like they belong in this world to helping an organization like the Salvation Army and local nonprofits reach their audiences better.
So at Abertay, I think there's one thing that we kind of focus on, which is we call it workplace simulation. So we have 4 undergraduate degree programs and 2 graduate degree programs on all the various different disciplines that make up games, from programming, art, so forth. But we also create an environment in which these different disciplines collaborate together and they get external briefs. And so it very much is about professionalization and learning how to work with people with very different skill sets on a range of projects. So I think that is our what we bring to the table.
I think what sets our postgraduate programs, at the Institute of Digital Games, we are primarily offering a postgraduate program, and that has a very strong research focus. So we have all the kind of units that one would expect in terms of game development, designing game worlds, game engines. So we have prototyping, we have those kind of units, but we have a strong research focus, which makes the most of the multidisciplinary character of our program, which has analysis, so humanities based, and also technology streams. So we push our students to be critical, right? Both in terms of the technology development. So we actively research, on the cutting edge of things like procedural content generation, creative computing, and things like that. On the humanities side of things, for example, with my colleague Stefano Gualeni, last year I published a book called Virtual Existentialism on existential philosophy applied to computer games. And we do push our students to find these kind of bridges between game studies and disciplines like philosophy, literature, architecture, and use those as tools for thinking critically about how they can work on their own games, as well as consider games within a broader social perspective.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. I think everyone got to answer that. So what I'm hearing, and I agree, and that is something I've seen on my side as faculty and having taught, across games. I previously taught a non-games program, but focus on games. My area is also in social impact. And so thinking about how everything that games, it's a medium, it's a cultural medium, it's housed in, the current time. So it's not just about technical skills, which I think a lot of people think about that like, oh, it's all about programming, right? Like that's kind of, I didn't say it, you didn't say it, but I think that's all we also understand is that often people think, oh, you must just program, and that's what game development, how we think about games. But there's obviously so much research that goes behind it. There is if we're talking about social impact or ethics, right, that we have to understand that these products that we put out into the world, exist in society and affect people and our relationships with each other. So I think that's an important thing to share. And also to think about also the evolution of the technology, right? So games have been around for decades, often starting in simulation and education. And now we're having new applications and moving into these emerging areas where skills like animation have relevance, right, for new platforms. And then of course the business side of it, which, here we are with IndieCade, we're not, talking about AAA. I think that's also what people often think about, right? The big blockbuster games. And so thank you for sharing that. When we talk about games, there's so many aspects of it, and you can succeed even if you're not, say, a programmer, right? Or if that's not your forte or your interest. So I might pivot. So I'm going to pivot from there into a question of, if you could describe a student who would stand out, you succeed, thrive, and enjoy being in your program, what might be some traits that they would exhibit? Maybe in general, but if you want to, obviously apply it to your program or a certain type of role within the games, academic games world.
Sorry, I had to shut the door. People just came back from soccer. So I think in our program, one of the things that we try to do is, and like William talked about, we also try to build our classes out like a studio and, really have the students, the way I structure my assignments is that, yes, they're going to have some technical skill, like you mentioned, at the core of it, I guess core, but then they're also going to do some studio activity. And that might be something like, you're going to collaborate on a team, you're going to run Scrum, you're going to, do some of these like collaborative skills that you'd see on a job, whether that be an indie or a AAA. And then there's some higher level thing like study the history of a genre of games, intersect with another field, do something that's, more theoretical. And the students that really get into that are the ones that can, I guess, get into that broad scope of thinking. They're usually very curious. They're usually the type that, they're not reliant. And you mentioned we're not just doing tech training. What happens, at least in my opinion, when you do just tech training is that the student only has like a kit of parts to work with. And when they encounter a problem that's outside that set of skills, which is every day, they're going to crash and burn. Students that are really curious, that are willing to look outside the normal, I guess, set of parameters are the ones that are really gonna succeed, I think.
I can add a few more. At GMU, we use project-based learning and in team environment. So as Chris mentioned, collaborative skills such as the interpersonal or team communication skill is really important. And sometimes we say a simple math, 1 + 1 is 2, right? So it's always better, instead of working by yourself, you try to gather team of talent so that you can bring certain things you cannot do, and by bringing someone else. So we always talk about this team environment, and then sometimes work smarter. I mean, you can Google or go to Stack Overflow to try to find answers for like 10 hours and still struggle. Instead, you can just you can form a better team of talent who can actually work together to solve the problem in shorter period of time. So we focus on that team environment. And if you want to be successful game designer and game developer, I guarantee, once you have better the team or communication skill, and it will be a lot like a, I mean, you will create a lot better games.
I totally
Sorry.
agree with that. Oh, I'm sorry, you can go.
Go ahead, Kat. It's all right.
Oh, okay. I know it's so hard on these things to know. Yes, I totally agree with that. One of the biggest values that drove me when I was developing the Games and Emerging Media program at Marist College is the idea of community, and this idea that everyone feels like they're included, that they belong, and that they matter. And so, you know, that really that sense of warmth and community, like we try to bring to all of our classes and all of our events. And we really want everybody to thrive. I mean, we really truly believe that every student is, individually capable of being successful, and that as a collective, that we're also all part of a team where we're making really amazing work together. So I would say, the students that, all students, I think, can benefit from learning communication skills, that we're helping each student individually be able to express themselves and learn how to express themselves through gaming. And so, I'm hopeful that, we really think about the strengths of each student, and that we try to support them and guide them and help them grow together.
And I think adding on to that, when we look at it at Abertay, I guess we've heard the expression, the T-shaped student, T-shaped learning. So someone, a student who can do a little bit of everything and a lot of a couple things, right? And having someone who really gets interested in kind of a craft specialization for a specialist role and develops a lot of depth and knowledge and brings that to a level of doing research, practically a very research-oriented approach towards that role, while still being able to be flexible and still work in a small team and hot seat and be able to switch out. So there's that element of developing kind of professionalization, good professional habits, communication patterns, but also being able to sit down in a group of people that you like and you get along with, and you want to work together and say, all right, what skills do we have? What do we bring to the table? And what can we make with what we know how to do? I think that is a lot of what makes up a good Abertay student.
And pardon me.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that, Daniel. So at Miami, one of the things we encourage is to explore outside of the games and sim program. So, and I mean, I feel like this is common. This is something that we all do, right? So a good way to make interesting games and interactive content is to kind of explore your external world, and to kind of take classes that are outside of games. So, being a liberal arts institution, we have a lot of resources in that regard. So that's something that I think definitely helps. Taking those courses in the humanities or in the sciences, in the arts, so are things that are very helpful. And, just to comment for a second on the notion of success, because something else that I'm sure that everyone's also familiar with is the difference in experience level and skill range for incoming students, say at the freshman level. For instance, if you're in an intro to 3D modeling class, there may be high school students that have had a few 3D modeling classes, whereas some folks haven't, right? And then how do you account for that, right? Another thing too is, once you finish your academic career and you tried to go into the game industry, you start your own studio, whatever looks like success to you. For some folks, I mean, that does happen right out of school, right? But for some folks, it doesn't. And it takes a little bit of perseverance to, continue on with the work so you can experience that success. Because I mean, the time frame I think is different for every individual. And then, how do you accommodate and support those alumni that haven't quite made it through yet or haven't quite realized where they're going? So, and by the way, I'm following the stream, and there's a really sweet Bob Ross emoji that really caught my attention, and thank you for posting that, by the way.
Yeah, like I wouldn't say that within our program at the University of Malta, we have a particular ideal student. Being a postgraduate program, we've had people coming in with first degrees in computer science, engineering, but also humanities, literature, philosophy, media studies, podiatry. One of the best students we've ever had a first degree in podiatry. And this is partly by design, right? So we want students, I think this kind of ties in with what Matt was just saying. We want students to come in already with a strong foundation of knowledge in a certain area, whether that's a technical area or an area in the arts or the humanities, and then the ability to apply that knowledge and that perspective to games. I also mean that we don't have an ideal student in the sense that we encourage our students to follow different paths, whether that's going into the games industry, starting their own studio, or going into further doctoral research. And we've had a number of our students going on to do PhDs. But I think what we would like to see in all students, and what will really be the mark of what we're aiming for, is the development of a critical perspective on games, right? So of course, learning the technical skills to work on game projects, learning to work in a team and so on, but also just the idea to kind of be able to take a game apart, to look from an innovative perspective on games, to be able to ask the right questions, develop that kind of thinking outside the box. That's what we would like to see in our students.
Excellent, thank you, everyone. Yeah, so I'm not here to speak as much, but to help moderate, but in my own experience, that students don't realize how much games are collaborative. Many of them anyway, they think they're going to make it all by themselves, and it's interdisciplinary in terms of the kind of the technical side of it, but also kind of speaking to some of what you've all said is the research side, right? And we're not talking about research specifically from doing evaluation and quantitative research, but really, topically, even if you're creating something that is more of an entertainment game, understanding, if we want to talk about maybe ethics, right, or some kind of philosophical connection, or just even developing a world and narrative, I think there's research that should be done. And as a designer, I consider myself a designer first, and games as a medium for design, but really understanding the context for which you're designing, and that is what we mean by, I think we can all kind of collectively say that's research, right, beyond some of the more traditional definitions of research. So definitely interdisciplinary, collaborative, and that you might have challenges, people talking about collaboration and dating, trying to find the good fit. And, students may struggle with at some point in their journey. Sometimes, the teams are randomly put together, right? Or they're based on skills, trying to group people to have diversity of skills, but the communication piece isn't quite there yet, right? And I think that speaks to what many of you had said, honing in communication, figuring out the right workflow, how do we divide and conquer to the strengths of the group, and lean on each other and accommodate each other, and collaborate. So that actually I have a question kind of tied to especially I think maybe what Daniel said, and prior to Daniel, which I believe was Matt. But basically, and I think all of you, but what types of jobs might a game student look at that's maybe beyond kind of the traditional or standard job? A lot of students might say, I love games, I want to work for a AAA game company, right? I'm not saying all students, but that is something we've probably all heard. But what is actually a viable pathway, alternative, or maybe as a stepping stone, right, towards a different, more traditional game job that you've seen students and alumni pursue? You can give it a specific example, or just kind of list some areas in which a games education, whether that's game design, game development, the research of games, might apply to fields beyond working on a commercial game.
I think I can start. At GMU, we emphasize the importance of serious game or functional game, like game that are not necessarily for pure entertainment, but for simulation and education. So because of our location, our graduate actually get a job in not necessarily in game industry, but government agencies or some consulting firms, because these days, many government agencies and companies try to hire a problem solver, create a problem solver who can bring new perspective. So in our industry, we sometimes use the term gamification. So many companies try to utilize gamification to do something new. So in Northern Virginia and DC area, there are many consulting firms, and they actually hire this junior game designers to kind of to analyze some problems and suggest some new perspective and new solutions. And also government agencies, not necessarily game designer, but I see this trend. A lot of government agencies now try to document their process using 3D models and 3D animation. So many government agencies actually hired our graduates to do some 3D modeling and like some new ways of documenting their work using these 3D technologies.
I think where a lot of Abertay students, Abertay graduates go depends on which degree program they were in. So some of our more technical or programming oriented often might move to fintech, which is a pretty strong field here in Scotland. And there's also a pretty rich data science industry in the area as well. There's also a lot of people going to general UI UX once they've done some work in the field. And also there's a lot of movement around Europe. We're very much a kind of a Europe-facing institution. So some of our graduates will stay in, like they might start off in the kind of the local game industry, but they might wind up in Sweden or in France or elsewhere. But it very much varies depending on which program they were in originally.
Hi, everyone. So as you can see, we are in a beautiful Hudson River Valley location with Marist, but we're actually really close to the New York City area. And there's lots of cities around us. There's Philadelphia and Boston. And obviously the students don't need to stay in the tri-state area, but there's a lot of opportunity even in New York City, where there's a lot of companies you wouldn't think about that are really trying to boost up their interactive media and games focus. So everything from fashion to finance to TV and film, Nickelodeon, Scholastic, Disney, like all of those kinds of companies are here close to us. And certainly I actually used to work at some of those companies myself doing game design before I became a full-time faculty member. Also, I mean, healthcare companies are looking for these kinds of interactive designers and game designers and developers. We also, we sometimes forget about, the burgeoning ed tech field, and there's a lot of ed tech is looking for these kinds of design thinkers who really understand how different disciplines come together, and we teach all of those kinds of skills. Whether the student is interested more in the software development side or the human side of game design or the more art and graphic design, we're supporting those different kinds of skills, and I think they apply to almost any industry. For example, right now I'm working for a international health organization, doing some consulting, and they're very interested in game design as well. And so it's almost everybody is realizing the importance and the power and impact of gaming.
So I wanted to highlight something Matt said earlier about success in this, because I think it's very relevant. One of the things that we talk to our students a lot about is what success looks like and can look like, and what you think it looks like, and how it's actually very different in the game industry. And right, what everybody's been talking about is not just like, oh, our students go to EA or something like that. I try to show them that there is a broad range of specialties you can get into. Serious and transformational games have already been mentioned. We actually, we have a games for education class that I teach that a lot of that is looking at that industry. We're not too far from like shell games and places like that. But we also talk a lot about transferable skills. Being in Ohio, we are not in a hub. I mean, there are companies. I mean, I even run my own company, and we just had a big Kickstarter and doing the indie thing and all that fun stuff. But we try to focus on like, okay, let's actually take inventory of the things you've learned, both from a technical and from a person perspective, so that you can maybe slip into some of those jobs where you are the design thinker, helping a company navigate through different types of problems. Maybe you get a graphics job. We've had students get jobs in adjacent fields like AR, VR. We have a lot of that in the area. We also do benefit from the fact that Ohio has a very nice tax credit for like film and media. So there are companies in the area that are doing graphics, that are doing animation and things like that. So it's a lot of talking to them very frankly about like, all right, well, what do you think getting a job in this looks like? And then let's guide you to a holistic view where, maybe you do start that, but maybe you can. And I've had students, get jobs in adjacent fields, and then, 3-4 years after plugging away, they post on Facebook, I got a job at Amazon, I got a job at Crytek or something like that. So, we try to really show them what it really means to get a job in the industry. That it's not like, if I don't work at Activision, I'm out of school, I'm screwed or something like that.
If I could just follow up with what Chris says, because, our something that we do at Miami is we have a digital innovation program where we send students away for a semester to various locations, San Francisco being one of them. We also offer one in Luxembourg, which is pretty much in the heart of Europe, which is absolutely gorgeous. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting, recently we had a student that was working QA at Raven Software in Wisconsin, well, he's an alum now, obviously, but recently got hired to work at Epic, but not Epic Games. It's Epic, the medical software company. And so it was kind of interesting how that kind of QA gig was a transition, into software engineering that was outside of games. But I mean, I feel like that's evidence that, the value of kind of a games degree is a gateway to other things. And, I noticed somebody in the chat was talking about UE5 or Unreal Engine for VR and that kind of thing. And, how the technology is filtering through other industries, which I think, other folks in here have touched on, but automotive and government, architecture, et cetera. And I think that it's really only a matter of time before, other disciplines are going to be embracing game engine tech, like, different industries started to embrace, say, like, the Adobe Creative Suite in the early 2000s, right? So I think we're in a good spot is what I'm trying to say. And it's a really exciting time to kind of be working with the technology.
Yeah, I'm going to be echoing a lot of that has been said already, right? So getting a job in games can look like many different things. You know, of course, we have students who have joined, you know, AAA companies, and as William said, you know, we are also quite a European-focused university in that regard. You know, like Malta is, you know, beautiful, it's sunny, but it's also a relatively small country. But we doesn't have had students joining, you know, companies like CD Projekt or Sony and so on. We've had students going into the kind of serious games field, you know, working on European Union funded projects in that regard, for example. Students going into technical development. So a couple of our faculty members and some students, for example, have been working, just to name a specific example, with Model.ai, right, which is a startup doing like AI and machine learning tools for game development. Board game development is another field which I think hasn't been mentioned, which we have had students going into. Again, that's something which a couple of our faculty members, including myself, are also involved with. Locally in Malta, there's a big online gambling industry, which is also a field that many students have taken their skills to. But so, you know, I guess what I would want to emphasize is that even if the route that people are taking is into games, that can look like many different things. Students who have chosen to go on to an academic career, for example, right now pursuing research further.
Great, thank you, everyone. That's exactly what I think students need to hear, is that there's not one size fits all. I love, yeah, definitely that these skills are transferable, whether they be the technical skills, whether they be the design strategy, understanding that games are interactive mediums, that our world is now full of these interactive systems, whether they be for education or, you know, just task-based things, right? Just to survive in life. And what was I doing the other day? I was applying for something, like doing some kind of form. And I was just like, as a designer, you know, you have so many frustrations as a technical person, as a designer, when you interact with something that doesn't work well and is not clear, that can be very frustrating. And I think when we think about feedback in systems and including games, we can apply that beyond entertainment. I myself also do work in transformational games and social impact. I've worked with human rights and social justice lawyers, worked on a tabletop simulation with nursing for health education, to speak to what Daniel just spoke about. And I've had students work with clients like World Wildlife Fund this quarter to reach a broad audience talking about environmental issues, right? So it isn't, again, just for entertainment isn't, I mean, again, this is IndieCade, right? So we're not even really talking about commercial games, but I feel like we often have that student that comes in and they have this expectation that they are only here to do one type, to get one kind of job. And I love that we have this breadth from our students and alumni already, and that will continue to evolve and change as industry and technology and our needs evolve as well. So thank you for that. So I know I mentioned like we want to make this fun. It's been really fun. I've really enjoyed this, but I do want to ask kind of a more like wacky question. I might need to take a second. Hopefully someone can jump in somewhat quickly. But if your program were in ice cream flavor, or if you prefer cookies or a more savory bagel, I'm also open to those. What would it be and why? How would you describe your program? Basically with doesn't have to be food, but I don't know, I like food. So
just give me a second. I'm gonna Google a list of Ben & Jerry's flavors real quick.
That is a great idea. That is a great idea. Are you a chunky monkey or a fish food or?
It's funny.
They're just great names.
When I randomly assigned teams for one of my classes, and during one of the projects this semester, all of the teams were named after ice cream flavors from a local chain. So let me go bring that up and see if I can pick one that's like, yes.
Let me go first then and say, and not just because it's one of my favorite ice cream flavors, but salted caramel, which of course is a great flavor because of for me, because of the combination of the saltiness with the sweetness. And I don't know, the kind of tenuous, I suppose, thing I'm drawing there is that our program at the University of Malta is very much this kind of mix of disparate elements, which I feel, or at least we hope, like comes together harmoniously, right? We have the technical side, we have design, and then we have humanistic analysis, and we hope that comes together into something which kind of brings together things which don't initially seem like they might go together to provide this kind of complex, kind of multifaceted way of looking at games.
So you said ice cream flavors, but you also said bagels. And since I'm in New York, I'm going to say a bagel flavor, which is the everything bagel, which has like everything. It's got, sesame seeds, poppy seeds, caraway seeds, all living together harmoniously. And I love what you just said about this idea of harmonious. So for us, even just harmonious in terms of disciplines. So we've got artists, we've got programmers, we've got designers, we have people who are more on the education side, on the more interested in the business side of games, all working together in teams to create wonderful and amazing, whether it's game experiences, VR, AR, software together. But also the students themselves, I think, are really connected. We try to support them in terms of building a community within their cohort. And, it seems to work because they all end up like wanting to live together, wanting to make games together, even beyond the classroom. Some of them start companies together, and they develop these lifelong friendships. And I just feel like they are, even if they do come from different backgrounds or have different experiences, they all work together really well.
I'm going to jump in, and you mentioned Chunky Monkey, but I'm going to do an adjacent flavor. Again, the local chain handles Monkey Business, which is very similar. It's banana flavored ice cream with caramel ripple and brownie pieces, and same kind of energy of like there's a little bit of a mix of everything. So it is that like collaborative and all over the place thing. But I chose that one also in particular because of the name Monkey Business. There are always external factors that are going to hit you. We try to embrace that. We try to teach students how to like roll with that. And we also want them to be silly. I mean, even when they're making a serious game, we want them to be silly because that's when your brain kind of opens up. That's when that's how you roll with the monkey business that happens when somebody comes in and says, my 13-year-old thinks that the game should have this. So that's something that I chose that one.
So Abertay's in Scotland, and while it might be tempting to say something about haggis ice cream, I won't take us there. But there is actually a tradition of kind of gelato inspired ice creams that came from the Italian immigrants into Scotland. And the Edinburgh, the region around here has interesting immigration history, and there's this fantastic gelato place called Mary's Milk Bar in the middle of Edinburgh. They have all sorts of flavors, and at one point I think I had a whiskey and salted caramel ice cream. A Lefroy, with a little bit of Lefroy whiskey in it, and I guess that would be us. There is still something of a very Scottish character about Abertay, my accent notwithstanding, and I think you would pick that up if you're here.
I still can't make up my mind. I went and looked, and I think I've given myself too many options. I'm gonna go with the Tonight Dough. Apparently, it's a caramel and chocolate ice cream with cookie swirls, gobs of chocolate chip cookie dough, and peanut butter cookie dough. Whew. That sounds really rich. And I think the reason why is because there's so much to do on campus. So something that you'll notice from current Miami students is they're always into something, whether it's extracurricular or if it's related to our program. We're also a global game jam site. We have various student organizations and student clubs. So yeah, it's like a very flavor-packed pint of ice cream. I'm gonna go with that.
Okay, I guess this is my turn. Yeah, it's hard to come up with a specific flavor, but I would say the like Cold Stone ice cream bar that make ice cream with the nitrogen. And I think what really matters is all you can choose toppings, I guess. That's like what represent our program, because we start with our fundamental curriculum and you can add your own flavor to it to customize the curriculum. So in a sense, I mean, again, like we teach the core education in game design and development. And then once you find your calling, like for instance, there are various elements or emphasis in game design, such as graphic game art, creative writing, and game programming, and game entrepreneurship, and the sound design and game music composition. So in a sense, we try to teach everything at the introductory level. And then once they find their calling, they will further and strengthen their skill set. So in a sense, we provide this ice cream, and then they will pick and choose their own toppings and sprinkle, and sometimes it's exotic like hot fudge and melting ice cream. But at the end of the day, it's all melted together well and give us a strong flavor. So yeah, I'm gonna get some ice cream now.
I know, right? Everyone's gonna get some ice cream. I love the creativity of the group. Obviously, we're all in this kind of in a creative field, so you all brought it. I love it. I'm definitely hungry for ice cream. And I'm trying to follow the chat a little bit too. Someone said none of these programs are half baked, so I appreciate that as well. Calling in a Ben and Jerry's flavor. Awesome, but yeah, I mean, with all the programs are different. But what I think they all share is that there is a diversity, right? And there are different flavors of games programs out there. And so, not everyone likes the same flavor, or some people prefer some to others. So I think that's, for those who are, especially I think looking at maybe continuing game studies or entering game study into a games program, these are things to think about, right? So what characteristics, or what are their interests? What do they want to hone? What do they want to learn? What do they already have? And what flavors can they bring into the mix? Going with this analogy, right? To have a successful and delicious outcome. I don't know if that was too cheesy. All right, so let's if there's a way we can be maybe a little bit more specific, then what is one of those ingredients of your program that makes it unique? So maybe what's a unique class that your program offers that maybe you haven't really seen at many other institutions. I know, for example, Matt mentioned programs in Luxembourg, and I already forgot San Francisco, somewhere else, right? Oh, cool. Yes, I know DePaul does a study abroad in Japan over the summer. It doesn't have to be study abroad. That is just one thread that I picked up on. But is there another type of class that's either been very successful, maybe you piloted it became so successful, wildly successful, it's kind of maybe a flagship, doesn't have to be a flagship, right? But could it be turned into a flagship course? Is there something that's on the horizon that you're really excited to launch? Maybe did you learn something from COVID? So did a new class come out of COVID that now you're like maybe going to integrate into your program, and you want to promote that as a strength of why someone might want to come study with you and your colleagues?
I think I can start. And we are a computer game design program, and sometimes people ask us why. Why is the computer game design, not development? Or because we teach computer programming and technology as well. But sometimes we say this. We try to teach our students how to design people's experience while they're playing our game. So in a sense, we really try to think about that relationship. And we really try to emphasize what the impact our game that can make, or the impact that we can make as a game designer to this society. That's really important thing to us. So we try to think about this. Sometimes it could be HCI, human and computer interface. So we think about this design aspect, and we try to educate our students as a creative problem solver using computer game design and development skill sets. That's one thing we emphasize at George Mason University. And one thing I can add is we have very strong relationship with Asian game companies and Asian countries. So we received more than 1 million donation from Tencent, China. And we also have this special short-term study abroad program in Japan. So our students travel to Japan and do some showcase their work. And as a result, we actually placed a couple of game designers in game studios in Tokyo, Japan. So, and then we do have international campus in Songdo, Incheon, Korea. So our students can easily have study abroad program in Korea, and Korea is like a very big place for game and esports. So we can definitely add that unique aspects with the globalization in mindset. Thank you.
I guess I can talk about one of our classes real quick. We've got a class that I've been teaching called game prototyping, and that's, lots of schools have prototyping classes, but what we use it for is kind of holistic look at, running a game studio, being a self-sufficient game designer. It's a class where we treat it like you have X amount of time to create a game project. And we try to look at a variety of tools, not just traditional tools, but Daniel, you mentioned tabletop design. That's one of the things that we didn't do this year with COVID. I just made the choice not to, but usually we do it with tabletop design, so they get a little bit of that. It's their opportunity to really explore the parts of the craft and touch on a few things. Twine, small non-programming game engines like GB Studio, which is a thing that makes Game Boy games, which is awesome. All the way up to Game Maker, and then we do have them code the thing. But that's a class where we have them showcase games, we have them act like an indie game developer, we have them treat it like a extended set of game jams. But that kind of breaks them out of the traditional, like, I'm going to slog through Unreal or Unity kind of game making and just, churn out ideas fast. And we find that that's where a lot of the students tap into their whimsy. We had a Game Boy game this year where the prompt was make a game about going to the store. And it's a narrative focused game. And they made a game where you're three dogs in a trench coat trying to go to the human store to get treats. So, that's been a thing that I think has really helped students get into that designer mindset. That does help when they get into seeing how serious games apply or getting into some of the applications everybody else has talked about.
Hi, so at Marist, the students do get a taste of everything. So a little bit of the business side, the programming, the art side, and design. But in their final year, they do come together and work on games together as teams. And like Chris was saying, we have a game studio course where they basically function as a little mini game studio when they work on games. We also have a capstone course where they all come together and work on one big game. Those are usually done in Unity, but it could be a board game, it could be other types of games depending on what the students want. But they create a whole portfolio of games by the end of that year. We also definitely have study abroad. We're one of the top. Marist is one of the top places for students doing study abroad. Over 50% of our students go abroad in some way, and that could be Japan or Singapore or the UK or Australia, but we also have internationally, we have a campus, a Marist campus in Italy. So a lot of students do that as well. And then finally, one of the things that I created was something called the Hudson Valley Games Conference. We've been doing it for over 8 years, even before the games program was around. And what we do is we invite industry speakers to come and talk to our students, but then the students are really the ones who are doing most of the presenting. They are practicing their public presentation skills. They're talking about their work. They are demoing their games, and the industry speakers can then connect with them, and they can network, and it's just like fun. It's like a party. It's almost like a celebration of student work. And we throughout the year are always celebrating student work. We're always trying to have fun events together. We are also a global game jam site, but we also do other game jams regularly throughout the year, and we try to have fun together.
Something that we do at Miami is our Inside the Game Developers Conference course. So where we have students, we send students out to San Francisco for the Game Developers Conference, so they get to experience that kind of as students for the first time. Kind of like what Kat's saying about sharpening networking skills and that kind of thing, and also taking in conferences at that level and kind of learning at that, I guess, in that kind of environment where it's supercharged, it's really exciting, which is a really great experience for students.
Yeah, so I think one thing which sets our program apart at the University of Malta is that apart from the kind of more general courses, which one would expect, like we incorporate into our program kind of really, let's say, deep dive courses where we can really focus on specific areas of games or games from specific angles. So for example, I give a unit on games and narrative where we apply a narrative theory to games. My colleague Costantino Oliva gives class on musicology and sounding games. Apart from that, there's also the fact that our students, so like every year, half of our students, sometimes more, are international students. They're moving to Malta to follow the course. So we really try to kind of inculcate a sense of community, right? We organize all kinds of events, right? Monthly board game sessions, reading groups. As Kat mentioned, the Global Game Jam. We also host the Malta edition of the Global Game Jam. And so on, and people to have, book rooms to work on their own projects in their teams. So that sense of community is something that we really push right within our program.
I need to step in to say we need to wrap up very quickly. We have to get ready for the next session. Any very quick final remark, but we really need to end.
No problem. Thank you to all of our esteemed panelists, Chris, Daniel, Kat, Matthew, Song, William. It was a great conversation with all of you. I hope we can continue it offline, off of this channel. And I don't know if there are any other final words, but it was very enjoyable. I think we had some nice chatter on the chat as well. And yeah, I think I'll end it with an ice cream statement. But basically, so I started with ice cream and on the flavor, then we kind of drilled down into the different types of ingredients. And so it seems like there's some overlap in the ingredients, but the flavor is a little bit different. We've got, different forms of prototyping. Again, I do a lot of analog as well. So I love that people are very much thinking about, it's not just about the technical, it's about designing systems, and we don't need the tech to do that. Opportunities that are both local, national, international, and bringing and doing things like the Global Game Jam, right? So that's a global event that happens locally. So there, we all have overlaps, but we all have our different flavors. And so I hope all the people out there looking at the programs now have a sense of what flavor you might be getting at each institution. And I think everyone here is open to being in communication with anyone interested and who has any more questions. So thank you so much. Have a good day. Yay.
Thank you.